That's right.
No, no. Give you a cue or a like Meena, let's like 5 minutes to that will happen on the chat.
Jack it up.
Shall I mute my phone or my laptop or no?
lined up today, and very happy to have Anne to kick off the day with the keynote. So I'm sure it's going to be very powerful. Hi, Payal.
Hi,
Payal.
Pallavi.
So I'd like to introduce Payal to you. Payal is the Director General of the IFCCI, the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce. So she's going to do a welcome and an introduction, but I just thought it's nice to have an introduction. So Payal, Anne.
Of course. Bonjour, how are you?
How are you? Thank you. Very nice meeting you. Very happy to be there.
Yeah, we're very, very happy to have you. Excellent. So we start in 4 minutes, Sapna?
Yes, Payal, we'll start sharp at 2:30.
Okay, fine.
I just hope my system will not crash again.
We
Fingers
had
crossed.
challenges with Ashwin yesterday. Ashwin's connectivity yesterday.
Jack it up.
It was a great success. The first day was extremely rich in terms of content and discussions. We had a great message that was sent to us by the French ambassador to India, His Excellency Mr. Emmanuel Luna. We also had a great keynote address by Mr. Cedric Rama, who is EVP HR and Head of Sustainability and Responsibility at Pernod Ricard Group, followed by two very interesting panel discussions. One was, the first one was with a group of CEOs, where we learned more about new ways of leading teams. And the second one was on diversity and inclusion, which is an extremely important topic. And I think we definitely got some great insights and learned about how certain changes can definitely take your organization a long way. So I'm really looking forward to today. I'd like to once again thank the IFCCI HR leadership, the leadership of the IFCCI HR committee, Shrikant Lonikar, who is also the chairperson of the committee, but also the convener of this conclave. And of course, vice chairpersons, Pallavi Tyagi and Niruban Rupatevan. Thank you very much to all three of you. So today we're looking forward to some great panel discussions. We have Madame Anne Lebel with us, who is CHRO Capgemini Group. And we have two very interesting sessions lined up on new employment models and well-being. So before I pass over to Shrikant to take the proceedings further, I would also now like to take a moment and formally launch the e-booklet that our team has worked on. And if I could please ask somebody from the team to display the cover page of this e-booklet. And I would also request Sapna, Pallavi, Niruban to please put on their cameras, because this is a great team effort. So just to give you a very quick overview, this is a 20-page booklet that we've put together. It has some great articles and case studies on topics such as resilience of SMEs during COVID-19, leadership strategies, moving ahead in a VUCA world, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It has an article on employment laws, and of course, some great stuff on mental health and well-being. So do look out for this. We're going to be sending it to all of our members on Monday, and it will be available on our website as well. And now I'd like to take a moment and thank once again all of our sponsors and partners, without whom this conclave would not be possible. I'd like to thank our platinum sponsors, Capgemini, EM Lyon, and Pernod Ricard. I'd like to thank our gold sponsor, Amadeus, silver sponsor, Legrand and Sodexo, and our knowledge partners, Trilegal, and of course, media partners, People Matters. So thank you very much to you all for contributing to the success of this conclave. And now over to Shrikant, who is the convener of the conclave. Over to you, Shrikant. Thank you.
Thank you, Payal. Very happy to see that launch of the e-booklet, and I'm sure our participants are going to enjoy going through that. So we'll be sharing with everybody. So hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2. We are here with, again, a very good list of speakers coming to you after yesterday's fantastic session. Don't waste the crisis. Rebase your resources and transform. Compassion, empathy, and empowerment will be the key qualities and characteristics of new organization. Managers must become a coach in the new world, and it should be an objective as important as business goals are for them. Collaborative working will gain more importance in future, and managers should immediately stop micromanagement. Overconfidence and arrogance will pull you down. Become more inclusive, set and achieve measurable goals on diversity and inclusion, and address your unconscious bias to become a preferred employer. These are some of the many pearls of wisdom showered on us yesterday by the dignitaries. Today again, we have several eminent speakers coming over to talk to you. Anne Lebel, CHRO Capgemini Group, will be delivering the keynote shortly. Isabel, Walt, President of the Executive Board, Emilion Business School, will be the next speaker talking to us. We will then have a panel discussion on new employment models. This session will be moderated by Meenal Chowkar, Vice President, Human Resources, Legrand, India. And joining her in the panel are very successful and renowned speakers that include Manu Wadhwa, CHRO of Sony Pictures Network, and Nicola Peugeot, Head of Strategy and Development and Executive Board Member, Emilion Business School, Atul Gupta, Partner, Trilegal, and Nitin Sethi, CEO, India and South Asia, Human Capital Solution, Aon. Next panel, immediately after that, we'll discuss on the theme of mental well-being and building resilience at workplace. This panel will be moderated by Suvarna Mishra, VP Human Resources at Sodexo BRS India. This is another powerful panel with highly accomplished and eminent speakers that include Yash Mahadik, President, Global Human Resources and co-lead business transformation at Lupin Global, Sunny Iqbal, partner and co-leader, family business practice, Econ Zender, Shalini Nair Kumar, Senior Director, People and Culture, Communications and Brand and Facilities, Amadeus Labs, Bangalore, and Marcus Rani, Champion of Wellbeing and founder and CEO of Human Age. And immediately after that, Anne Desimond, Head of Technology and Services Department, Mumbai Office Director, Business France, will talk about career and learning opportunities for developing young professionals under the French PIE scheme. As you can see, this day is again packed with exciting themes and prominent speakers. Let's begin then. Please join me in welcoming Anne Label, Chief Human Resources Officer of Capgemini Group. The key question is why leaders are important. You meet them in every sphere of life, but for sure they are around you every day in your organization. We all know various definitions of leaders and leadership. However, we continue to discuss them all the time. Leaders are not only leading people, but they also develop organizations' capacity to achieve greater success in future. Strategy, innovation, technology, process, culture, and there are many such critical areas of the business and organization that they influence with their leadership. Has something changed in the focus and agenda of a leader in the new world? Do they need to recalibrate and change? And if yes, what needs to change and how can they? Let's listen from the expert. With great pleasure, I introduce to you Anne Label, Chief Human Resources Officer, Capgemini Group. Anne has deep experience in consulting and leading HR. She has led large international and global teams. Her main areas of expertise are organizational design, integration processes, people development and talent management, international projects, and change management. With that, I welcome you again, Anne, and over to you.
Thank you very much. And hi and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to have that session with you today and very happy as well to share views and some key elements with you on that hot topic, in my view, that is leadership in new normal times. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank IFCCI and to congratulate you as well for organizing that great and very successful event. Now, to start with, maybe a few words on Capgemini, but I'm sure you already know about us. Capgemini is made of 270,000 women and men across the world, and 120,000 of them are actually based in India. So India is a key country or a key geography for all of us. We have a presence in nearly 50 countries, so we are truly a global company. We're a global leader in consulting, technology services, digital transformation, and we used to say that we enable our clients to design and build tomorrow's businesses to make the most of the opportunities offered by technology and to boost competitiveness and agility. So we aim at being a leader for leaders. So leadership is a key topic for us in that perspective. Our values have also shaped who we are today. We are a responsible leader, determined to have a positive impact on all stakeholders within our ecosystem. And this has been translated more recently in our new purpose that guides us every day. And I thought it was a nice opportunity to share it with you today. It's unleashing human energy through technology for an inclusive and sustainable future. Now to our topic today, leadership in new normal times. What does it imply? You've already discussed it many times, I guess, but the COVID crisis has pushed companies, it has pushed all of us to renew ourselves faster than ever. It has changed the way we organize work. the way we behave and function within the company, without or outside of the organizations as well. It has also accelerated digitization of all our activities. And whilst activity has prevailed during the crisis, it has also come with a huge number of disruptions, from work-life balance to engagement, and of course, communication, people management, and leadership. So I personally believe that it's been a real stress test of leadership. And along with that, there's a few challenges or new challenges that have emerged. And let me share a few of these with you right now. Amongst these challenges, I'd like to mention for the leaders, managing the transition, first of all, towards remote work in a very quickly when the crisis happened, but then also hybrid workforce whilst preserving quality and commitment. Listening to people, reassuring employees, being able to detect psychological risks and helping our employees to overcome their fears. Starting with feeling more pressure with work from home, lack of interpersonal connections with colleagues and peers, less visible impact, and so on and so forth. Along with this, it's about dealing with mental health challenges, life challenges even, and higher burnout rates, and being responsible to ensure health and safety for all our employees. It's also being able to provide perspective and purpose whilst being in the dark, to keep employees engaged, and being able in parallel to that to ensure delivery and productivity. Creating a culture of trust and inclusion in these new conditions. And last but not least, keeping up with business and clients and the bigger picture whilst managing the crisis. So you may say that, taken separately, each of these challenges, well, okay, it belongs to what is normal in a leader's role. But when you put all of it together and in a very fast-paced transformation environment, it's a real different story. So when I say that it's been a leadership stress test, in my opinion, the COVID crisis has actually been a revealer of leadership. It has brought people, leadership, and human matters back at the heart of our leaders' responsibilities, where, honestly, for many of them, it was pretty much a peripheric activity. It has pushed leaders to communicate directly across hierarchies and more transparently as well. It has forced leaders to juggle between crisis management and strategic work. And most leaders did really great through that crisis, and quite naturally and authentically. So the question for me now is, how do we make sure that we are able to keep human focus in the future, that we are able to make it sustainable, and that we keep also that ability to play with multi-dimensions when we talk about leadership. And in fact, it's here to stay. And because it has deeply changed the expectations of employees, clients, companies, all these expectations all these stakeholders have from their leaders. And there's many lessons that we can learn from the crisis to build on strengths that we have observed through these past months, or it's been even a year, and to make it actually sustainable. There's 3 lessons that I would like to develop a little bit more when I speak about what it means, in my view, to be a leader in the new normal context. So we said it, the crisis has pushed us to transform our leadership, but also our business models, and accelerated the need for digitization and virtualization. So that means that it has also changed the roles and activities, and also the attributes that we expect our leaders to develop. And I will spend a few minutes on that one. It has also impacted the way people think lead, interact, collaborate, the way work is conducted and delivered, the way teams work together, the way we communicate. So it means that we have all been able to develop new rituals, but how do we keep it in the future, and how do we make it standard? And I will develop a little bit more on that one as well. And it has also had impact on existing processes and the way we are able to constantly challenge the status quo, being agile in the way we reframe, in the way we rethink our processes and structures. And I will spend a few minutes on that one as well. So to the first point, we are now in a hybrid work environment and still in a fast-paced transformation environment as well. If you look at the conjunctions of these two elements, I think the role of leaders has to change. And I'm perhaps more talking about the activities that compose these roles here. So to share a few of these new, or let's say, activities where leaders need to focus more on, and it's not a comprehensive list, I would like to start with a more focus on talent, because, I mean, this is now, it's not new, but I mean, it's more and more a competitive advantage. And on that one, it requires a shift in the mindset or in the way leaders drive people development and talent management. So we're not anymore expecting leaders to tell people what training course they need to take, what development they need to take. We are not anymore expecting leaders also to own people careers, but to take a different roles and to be able to empower employees to grow skills and careers, to be, in other words, a responsive leader, enabling people to take ownership of their own growth, making sure that people continuously learn, update their skills, and also stay tuned, to identify new skills that are coming up. The second change of focus, in my view, is to take care of employees' well-being and safety. I mean, we have all seen a huge emphasis on that, and it's now core of every employee experience, and it's part of leaders' role. The third I would like to highlight is to make more data-driven people business. And this is a must-have in a hybrid work environment, to use data to manage our remote workforce, to detect risks, psychological risks, but also attrition risks, to identify expectations, to monitor performance, and so on and so forth. The next one I would like to mention is to enhance and practice remote management skills, of course, and then once again, to be able to keep growing business and develop different ways of creating and maintaining client intimacy. So to make this work, it goes with new leadership behaviors, new leadership mindsets, new leadership practices as well. It requires to build trust differently, to create a new experience with clients, with teams, being influencers and closer to our talents, with more coaching, proximity, and also rewarding or recognizing achievements differently. And it implies different leadership attributes in my view. And here as well, I'm going to mention a few of them that in my view are now key or at the heart of what's expected. To start with, I would like to mention empathy and active listening. It's not that we have never told or never said that it's important or it's part of any leadership attributes, but as I said earlier, it has now become core in what is expected from leaders in order to be able to stay connected to teams, to take care, to pay attention, to also detect weak signals, So more than ever, we will expect our leaders to find the right balance between their IQ and also their emotional intelligence, and to bring this one up. The other one is the ability, in my view, the ability to set clear direction, to provide purpose, especially in uncertain times, to be forward-looking and proactive, because that will also help navigate uncertainty, reduce uncertainty for teams. Along with this, it's about being resilient, agile, and decisive. That has become very, very important as well. A clear and strong accountability on people development, that's another one. And it goes beyond considering people development as one of the activities. It's really to be able to live it and to embed it in everyday life. But also the ability to drive content, especially in the fast pace of transformation that we are all in. And for us at Capgemini, when we believe we want to be a leader for leaders, we need to have enough tech content, industry content, to be able to engage in strategic dialogues with our clients. Last but not least, amongst the different attributes, but this is nothing new, it's still strong communication skills, collaboration manners, cooperation, and amongst all of it, more transparency. Now, if I look at it, and I come to my second point, from a team's perspective, in our day-to-day lives, it's also a leadership activity to be able to build a new trust-based work culture. And that means being able to drive and to play new collective rituals. I mean, we all spend all our days in Teams meetings or Zoom meetings, whatever. But I mean, as these very frequent virtual connections are critical, are part of our life, it has made most of our meetings much more productive than it was before. But I mean, we have lost the informal touch, the informal connection, the ability to build trust in the way we were used to do it, the ability to build relationships by having a small chat between meetings, addressing or fixing issues informally, and so on and so forth. And I can speak for myself because I mean I have joined Capgemini 7 months ago in the middle of the COVID crisis, and I haven't even met with most of my team members. So I had to find my own ways to create team, individuals, but also team virtuals, to be able to offer individualized support, to be able to encourage experimentation and develop a positive feedback culture, and doing this from distance, to be able to provide moral support to teams, but also to find ways to give more space for autonomy, individual initiatives, and to become, at the end, more outcomes focused than managing tasks. So, again, new collective rituals, this is key to keep employees' proximity a reality, to build motivations. And for example, at Capgemini, we have now defined a few common standard new team rituals to support our leaders' work and to support the building of the trust-based managerial culture. Like, I mean, and you have all experienced the same or developed the same, making use of virtual coffees, virtual lunch, virtual celebrations, use mood barometer to check how people are feeling, anything that fosters a sense of unity and togetherness. We we all had to very quickly adapt, adjust, change our processes, digitize, and virtualize all processes and rethink our target operating models and business model. And this is also, in my view, part of leadership, to be able to now constantly challenge the status quo, ask the why and how could I do it differently and more simple. We've been able to switch to digital in most of our HR processes, to start with recruiting. And I mean, we haven't stopped recruiting in 2020. And I think we will use virtual ways or digitized ways of playing that process and that experience in the future as well. We have moved. We have all moved our learning frameworks as well to virtual, and we've been able to do this quickly. And in the future, we need to continue and to enhance it to provide a positive learning experience to our employees. Same for promotion processes and a few others. So it's definitely on our leaders' plates as well to be able to keep an eye and constantly improve and keep digitizing and virtualizing processes, along with providing a positive experience to our employees. Now, a few words as well on how we do this, or how do we plan to do at Capgemini to support and further develop leadership. By now, you will have understood that it's high on our agenda. So to start with, we believe that it's the right time, taking lessons from that crisis, it's the right time for us to look into our leadership practices and to clarify what we expect from our leaders in that new normal. So to start with, we will redesign or reshuffle our leadership model to be clear about what this good leadership looks like in our company. Then assess leadership quality along with this new leadership model, and build individualized and provide the right development support to all our leaders, and making sure that it's customized. The second I'd like to highlight is that we definitely focus on careers and skills development. And we've started already. We've actually introduced a new learning platform in 2020 that we call Next, when we had to virtualize all our learning programs. And we now have most of our programs, hard skills, soft skills, certification programs, but also executive leadership programs on that platform. And we have had by now more than 80% of our overall workforce that has used the platform at least once. And many of our employees have actually completed courses and certifications. We put a huge focus on talent management. I used to say, actually, it's to move from administrating a process to providing a real talent experience, to develop career paths. Then part of it is also to make sure that we provide visibility, that we provide perspective to our talents, that we grow our expertise as well, and that we better activate what we could call talent mobility. I mean, with many different business areas, and I mean, Capgemini is a huge potential of talents, but a huge potential of career opportunities as well. We survey our employees on a monthly basis to check on engagement and a few other items as well. And we will use that as well to monitor the quality of leadership. And by the way, we have seen through 2020 a constant increase of these engagement scores, especially in India, who has been driving high scores, and we pay high attention to the way managers take actions on the feedback that our employees give us. And that has very much contributed to the development or the increasing of these scores. And we have also spent some time defining, based on the lessons from that crisis, defining what our future of work framework should look like to make sure that we progress and that we provide a positive experience in that perspective to all our employees. So that means looking at our flexible work policy and making it global. That means looking at how we organize the work environment of our colleagues, how we organize our work places and premises in the future, and how we organize work assignments as well, now that we know that people can work anywhere to anywhere. To quickly conclude, and I'm going to repeat a few messages that I have been giving here. I think we will all agree on saying that what we've been through and are still going through has deeply transformed the way we lead, the way we work. Expectations from clients, from employees, from companies towards leadership have not only changed, but it has become broader and much more demanding. And what we ask from leaders today is far more complex than what we did request from them yesterday. So more than ever, it's on the agenda. More than ever, we need strong leadership, but also multidimensional leadership. It's people, business, strategy, thought leadership, and all of it with a more human component attached to each of these dimensions. So we also need to take care of these leaders and make sure that they don't get exhausted or that they don't suffer from fatigue of all these changes and multi-dimensions. So it's on their plate, of course, to adapt, to develop these new required skills or attributes, to also learn continuously and to take ownership of their own growth. But it's also part of our responsibility as a company and as an HR function to provide that platform, to provide that opportunity and the required development support. And I really believe that it's an opportunity on both sides for leaders to grow and for us also to open new windows and to better support or have an active role in people development. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have questions.
We have a small video to play. Can we have the video, please?
Do you want a future where technology constrains your business or empowers it? Will you innovate for the sake of it, or innovate so you're closer to your customers? Do you want to be reactive to what's happening or relevant for tomorrow? Will you choose profit over planet, or will you find profit in sustainability? Partner with Capgemini now and unlock the value of technology to transform your business. Capgemini. Get the future you want.
Thank you, Anne. We don't have time for questions because we wanted to have more and more time to listen to you. This was an incredible sharing. You spelled out role of leaders and leadership in the new world so well. I particularly liked your points on, the COVID-19 has been a revealer of leadership the role of a leader as a perspective provider and particularly the developing focus on employee well-being. This actually underscores the point why leaders are important and how they can be more effective in the new world. Overall, I felt your advice to leaders is to become more real. And of course, advice to the company and HR that we should take care of our leaders. Very appropriate. Thank you. Appreciate your time with us today and thank you again.
Thank you very much for giving me that opportunity. And I wish you a great session.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So that was Anne Lebel from Capgemini. And now we have a brief message from the president of the executive board of Emilion Business School, Isabel Walt. Isabel is an Emilion graduate and has an exceptional academic background and strong human qualities and values which have guided her career for past 30 years. She is a recipient of the French Legion of Honor and academic palms. She combines a very strong academic legitimacy, a strategic vision, as well as a solid innovation culture. She has held several management positions over the last 15 years and has demonstrated that she's an outstanding leader driven by results and excellence. Let's have a video message from Isabel.
Dear delegates, dear colleagues, dear friends, I would like to thank the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry for organizing this great event and for inviting Emilion Business School. It's a great pleasure and a great honor for me to share a few words with you. As some of you probably know it, Emilion Business School is a leading business school in Europe. We are a truly global institution with a presence on 3 continents and 6 campuses. 3 in France, 1 in Morocco, 1 in China, and 1 in India. Since our creation in 1872, we've been having a long tradition of innovations. We created the first incubator among French business schools, which will celebrate its 40th birthday in 2025. We set up the first Fab Labs among French business schools and perhaps within the French higher education system. We are one of the few higher education institutions to root our development in the maker's philosophy. We strongly believe in what the French philosopher Henri Bergson said, act as you think and think as you act, which I would modestly rephrase as learn by doing and do by learning. Our mission is to anticipate and foster meaningful transformation by producing and sharing high-end knowledge and by developing lifelong skills. To implement our mission, we invest in 4 pillars. The first one is hybridization. From a business school, we aim at soon becoming a business university that makes the most of the perfect mix between management, data science and artificial intelligence, social sciences and humanities. The second one is digitalization. We aim at soon becoming a truly blending institution that brings together the advantages of a vibrant campus life, which is so important with the COVID-related constraints, and those of a high-end educational platform. The third one is globalization. We were born in Lyon, which became the capitale de Gaulle during the Roman Empire due to its location at the heart of Europe. Today, our school welcomes thousands of international students and fosters their mobility between campuses, with 40% of our faculty was international. And the fourth one is corporate social responsibility. This is not just a buzzword. New generation rightly expect us to deal with social, ecological, and ethical issues in our research, but also our training programs for their life as professionals and as citizens. As educational leaders, we prepare our students to work in a complex and uncertain world and are not entitled to tell them what their future will be. However, we equip them with the right set of hard and soft skills to adapt to any circumstance. We root their development in the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that are key to our humanity and our planet. By doing so, we expect our students to be positive change makers and sense makers, not just for themselves, but for their environment and for society, whether they work in a firm, an association, the public service, or create their own company. We are strongly committed to India. We are a local actor present in Odisha, in Bhubaneswar, and soon in Mumbai. We are deeply rooted in the Indian fabric, wishing to contribute to the growth of the nation in collaboration with our partner, Xavier University, and with various other stakeholders, such as the Odisha government or the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Our aim is to build first-class research, learning, and training platforms in India. We are glad to see that our proactive social and financial scholarship policy is attractive to France more and more students to our programs. These local platforms will also help us contribute more towards the Indo-French corporate ecosystem by providing executive programs that will encapsulate our cutting-edge pedagogy right here in India. Make in India is very much at the heart of our vision and intent. I wish you an inspiring event and fruitful meetings to make the Indo-French relationships grow at a higher level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isabel. It's heartening to know that you have grand plans for India and you're talking about Make in India. Thank you. Okay, friends, so now it's time for our first panel discussion of the day. The hybrid model of new ways of working is a talk of the town now. Everybody is talking about it. It is leading to some new ways of employment as well. In many companies, the challenge is that employees do not want to come back to workplace even though the company needs them. And there are multiple challenges related to that. On the other side, in India, the classical models of appointed till age of retirement that we write in the appointment letter of employees for direct employees of the company and contract labor or contract working for temporary work for blue-collar employees, it's very prevalent. Now, with this remote working experience, use of technology has improved substantially across industries, which will support this hybrid model in future as well. At the same time, many jobs, maybe including at the senior management levels, are likely to become fixed-term or contract jobs or short-term project-based engagements or even part-time jobs. Is this trend really becoming big globally? Will this be real in India anytime soon? And if it becomes big, how big it can be? How good it will be for the industry and for talent? And will the talent welcome it? Let's hear from our experts in this panel discussion on new employment models. We have Minal Chowkar, Vice President, Human Resources, Legrand India, expertly moderating this panel for us. Minal is responsible for leading the Legrand Group's people and culture strategy in the region. A seasoned professional, she has over 18 years of experience in HR across various industries with companies like GE, JP Morgan, and Wipro. She has a master's degree in HR from Cornell University. And joining Minal in the panel are Manu Wadhwa, CHRO Sony Pictures Network, Nicola Pejot, Head of Strategy and Development and Executive Board Member, Emlion Business School, Atul Gupta, Partner, Trilegal, and Nitin Sethi, CEO, India and South Asia, Human Capital Solutions, Aon. Welcome all, and over to you, Minal.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Srikanth, and a big warm welcome to all my participants. I will take another minute just to sort of introduce you again. So our first panelist, Nitin, he comes with over 20 years of experience, most of it in consulting across various sectors and regions. So Nitin, we look forward to hearing from you on the prevalence of some of these new models across. Our next panelist, Manu, she comes with over 20 years, again, of experience as HR. She's currently the CHRO of Sony Pictures Networks, but she has worked, again, across different sectors and worked with companies like Coca-Cola, Amex, and GE. Welcome, Manu. Our third participant who joins us from Emilio Business School, Nicola, joins us all the way from France. Hi, Nicola. Great to have you here. And I think given his very unique background, we're really looking forward to his views when it comes to this discussion. And our last participant, Atul, who is the partner at Trilegal Legal Firm. He heads the employment practice here in India for them. So let me first maybe take a few minutes to set the context while Srikanth has sort of explained a little bit to what new employment models means. I will from there. So I think what we have seen is over the last couple of decades, given that the business environment really wants a lot more agility, we have seen organizations adopting some of these models already, right? So a lot of organizations have already moved towards short-term or fixed work, whether you call it contractor contingent workforce, or you call it platform workers, or you call them gig workers. We've already seen a lot of companies move towards that. Of course, like Srikanth mentioned, post the pandemic, we are seeing a lot of companies voluntarily or maybe forced move towards remote and hybrid working models, right? So what we want to really hear from the panel is how prevalent are these models across sectors and regions? What is the current landscape, legal and otherwise, as of today? And if organizations are seriously considering adopting these models, what are some of the things they should keep in mind? Right. So with that, let me maybe start off with Nitin. So Nitin, like I said, when we talk of new employment models, the biggest disruptor for me is gig or short-term employment, because that fundamentally changes the employer-employee relationship till retirement, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the market today? Do a lot of sectors, companies, regions have this model? And beyond the gig or short-term model, what are some of the other new employment models that you're seeing come up?
Yeah. No, thanks, Neil. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here with some old friends. So on your question, essentially in terms of what's really happening with employment models and gig, is gig here to stay? I think in many ways, the way I would define 2020 is it was like that one big experiment which actually will accelerate many workforce trends. And I think the most prominent among them is potentially the change or the move towards gig workers. In fact, if you see the US economy today, literally about a third of the workforce is gig. About 60% of the new jobs being created are all in gig economy, and that change is only accelerating over a period of time in terms of what's happening. I think in India, it's always existed, but some bits on the fringe, it hasn't. And I think maybe potentially Atul could speak about it. I think with the new labor legislations that are coming through and protection that gig workers would have, it would absolutely accelerate trends in that. In some industries, we already see significantly more number of gig workers already existing, technology, outsourcing, jobs like digital marketing, arts and entertainment, where it's a reasonably prevalent form in terms of what's happening. So overall, I would say it's a workforce trend that's accelerating. I think India would add more gig jobs, potentially at the rate of 25 to 30% a year acceleration in those jobs over the next few years. And as the labor legislation settles down and we're able to provide a cover to gig workers, even companies would start kind of in their own talent models, start building up a point of view around this. And we're beginning to see, to your question, with potentially large banks, insurance companies, media and entertainment organizations, technology organizations, because to maintain the balance between today's job and how companies are going through transformation, which are some of the future skills, and do they need to bring on those skills on a full-time basis or on a gig basis? cost of those skills, cost of future business models. I think in that sense, it's a huge change that's actually coming through the industry.
Thanks, Nitin. Has the pandemic changed anything significantly?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I think pandemic has changed it significantly. It's actually, firstly, in the short term, the near term, the pressure of cost. How do you get your costs down? I think that's one big piece. Work from home or work from anywhere that we call it. I think that further accelerates this. And I think in many ways, if you go back and actually do dipsticks or employee surveys, a lot of people on surveys today actually kind of come back with wanting to better manage their lives, flexibility and things around it. In that context, the ask or the need has completely come through. And that's getting built into future models. In fact, we've met with companies over the last 15, 20 days, and many of them now are, kind of genuinely are taking a much longer window to this, not just 2021, 22, but to say what would our business models look like 5, 7, 10 years from now? Where are skills available, skills not available, and what could we do? So in that sense, I would say it is increasing significantly.
Thank you, Nitin. So I think anywhere between 1/3 of the economy being gig or short term in US or developed countries to something maybe a little bit lower in places like India, but on the increasing trend. Yeah, India depends what you read and what statistics are. It's anywhere between 15 to 20 million today. Yeah, but again, accelerating pretty rapidly. Okay. Let me sort of take that and come to you, Manu. So I come from a manufacturing organization where gig work is maybe fairly limited to unskilled contractor type of setups. But you come from media, where I understand that gig work for skilled workers or short-term work or maybe other employment models are fairly common. So tell us a little bit about how common it is in media. What are some of the roles that you have that do well in a gig or short-term sort of employment?
So, thanks a lot, Meenal, and hi everyone. Once again, it's great to hear Nitin's thoughts as he highlighted some very critical statistics on Indian economy, specifically the gig workforce. If I was to just zoom in on some of those statistics, specifically focusing on media and entertainment industry, the one big reality of this respective industry is that gig formats has been the only way this industry has operated to the longest period of time, locally and globally. And what I mean by that is a gig format primarily allows you to connect people, get people together for a purpose, for a particular task or a goal, and you are joining that task force basis the skill, the premium of that skill, the requirement of that skill in that task force. So you come together, you design, you co-create a concept, you bring it to life, which millions and millions of audience around the world view, and then you spread out. You get on to doing something else. And that's very amoebic, and that's very naturally the way the media and entertainment industry operates. It may be difficult for other industry formats to understand that format because we classically believe in employment contracts. We classically believe in indefinite relationships with a brand, indefinite relationships with this cohort of defining values and cultures in a company, and commitment and loyalty. A lot of those facets on gig format take a very different meaning. And before I double click a couple of those for you, just to give a spread of the media and entertainment space in India. In India, just in Bollywood, which is largely centered around Mumbai, there are 2.5 lakh gig workers. And they range from spot, people to camera person, to lead talent artists that we all are very big fans of. They're all part of this gig ecosystem. And the industry just continues to rotate and work through. The estimate is that the gig format, while already a part of the industry, will continue to grow, as Nitin stated, at the rate of 24 to 25% and further penetrate into some of the areas which are defined classically for what corporate jobs are in media and entertainment space. Even they are moving towards that direction. The third element of what you asked for, that what differentiates and how it works in a gig format for an industry like ours, is when you think about a gig format, there are a few things which are very different. The first thing is that the entire element of manpower planning takes a very different shape. You don't do an annual forecast of a manpower and say, I was 100 and I'm going to become 200 basis business growth strategy. You actually take a step back and you say that I have to drive, let's say, 5 content productions by next year. And what do I need to get there? And therefore, the work fit takes priority. So rather than doing a manpower plan, I do actually a work fit plan, which needs skills to be sourced from the market on a hybrid mode. The second is I don't hire and I don't onboard. So it's a very different perspective to understand when I tell this to people, that traditional norms of onboarding people, making them really kind of warmed up to the idea of joining a physical ecosystem, that you're going to be a part of this ecosystem for many, many years to come, is actually not very prevalent in this world, because you're joining in for a purpose. So the hiring format actually gets converted to connecting the purpose of the individual with the purpose of the project. And second, integrating their aspirations with what that project is going to deliver for them. And that's one of the biggest drivers which gets people connected together. The third differentiator in this subset is we're very fond of getting attached to employment contracts. And we definitely have one contract which is rolled out to possibly 10,000 people in the organization. Many of us who are listening in, I'm sure, may have 2 to 3 versions of employment contracts at max. But in a gig format, you practically have a down to the last letter contract fitment as per the need of the individual. So for example, if I hire a gig format person who's very high on skill premium, my contract eligibility on benefits for that individual must be much higher than what I hire for a niche skill or what I hire for a generic skill as for that matter. Because this is a public forum, so I will reserve some of the named examples, but the unnamed examples are almost to the likes of that if there is a premium skill, that individual could almost have a benefit that I will be serviced lunch from a 5-star property only. Whereas the other person will actually have a regular lunch provision, which is going to happen through a buffet system. I'm going into that level of tacticalities. And the larger provisions on benefits definitely vary, whether it is workplace conservation to insurance to security to matters of relevance to individuals. Last, as I kind of pause on this, is you don't pay annual merit increments. And you don't do planning that I'm going to have an EOP or effect on payroll of 5% or 6%. You primarily pay for the skill and the premium that it offers on the scale of what you need. And if the premium commands a 10x from the individual that you want to get on board, you pay that 10x. You don't go back to a pay range, and Nitin might be looking at me and saying, Manu, that's why you don't go for my pay range schedules. But the standard pay range does not work, because if the individual in front of me is practically looking at a 10x premium and I need that individual because of that skill, I go 10x. I don't look at the classical model of industry range and what it brings to the table. So a long story short there, the gig format worker is a very individualized, customized approach to talent, human, and workforce management. And if we were to look at the government's endeavor around it, on the labor code of wages changes that are happening, I think the sooner we get comfortable with this agility, which our people formats need, the more fruitful and the more, I would say, effective would it be for the organizations as well. So long response, but I hope it helped get some perspective.
It did. No, I think that's extremely insightful. Again, I think you have challenged in the last 10 minutes all the fundamental traditional HR practices that we follow and take a lot of pride in as organizations. Extremely insightful. So Manu, I know you have to step out. I know something has come up a little bit urgently. Do you have maybe time for one more question? We can get done with yours and then move to the others. Is that okay? Or is it? Yeah.
Sure.
So one question for you, just a quick follow-up on non-gig new employment models, right? So, you can put your other sector HR hat on and look at companies that have moved to the remote working model or a part-time model or job sharing models, I think, which are getting more common post-pandemic. What are some of the things you think HR should keep in mind to ensure that corporate company culture, teamwork, building, team building, trust that a lot of leaders spoke of, to ensure that level and that engagement continues? Quick, maybe the top 3 things HR should keep in mind.
Sure. So my brief reaction on this, if I take a industry agnostic view, is 2 things to keep in mind as organizations are thinking about their formats to move into work from anywhere. And this may be classically different from the ethos of culture, leadership connect, which I'm sure all of us have as our top priority. I'm focusing on something which is becoming a burning issue, which is data and IP. I would leave that one message for all of us, that if we are thinking on that direction and it's almost become a reality for us to push for, focusing on how I am securing my IP data is very, very important to consider. And this is one of the biggest human capital priorities which all of us should push for. The second one, which I just iterated, which is the word culture and leadership, is that in a classical work format, you have leaders walking around, and there is a lot of culture that gets built with the leaders' expression of their ethos, and therefore that becomes the culture. Now that culture is getting co-created at every home. The way I approach my life has an influence on the way the corporate culture will be. And the corporate culture can only be kept intact with more and more leadership team members getting into the, call it the digital living rooms of the individuals. So leadership teams should come in closer to the living rooms of all team members they work with. And for all the workers who are out there, they're already influencing, creating of the culture, and organizations should take cognizance of it. So that would be my 2 cents, which is industry agnostic for you.
Thank you. Thanks, Manu. Get the leaders into the living room. Scary, but I think punchy for sure.
They are already there.
So, Manu, I know you have to step out. And again, I hope things are okay. There was a bit of an emergency. So thank you for your time. You can continue to stay till you can. But of course, I know you have to drop out.
My
so
apologies to everyone. And I will move on. Take care, Meenal. And thanks, everyone. Look forward to catching up. Bye-bye.
Bye. So, I will move now from sort of the demand side to the supply side. Nicola, I think Manu spoke about, based on what she said, it seems to be sort of a seller's market that if you come with the necessary expertise, you can really work it into your contract and make it worth your while. But, given that you work and see the next generation of the workforce, right, the Gen Y and the Gen Z, you probably work with them every day. Tell us a little bit about where they are coming from into the workforce, right? What is it that they look for in jobs? And are they fundamentally more open to some of these new employment models than older generations?
Well, thank you, Meenal. First, maybe the next generation is actually Gen A, because now we are at the end of the alphabet. So we're going to start the alphabet right from the start. But first, I'm not talking on behalf of youth in the world. I'm in contact with them, and I think we must be careful with this, because all of us we're still young, but we are less young than the one coming. So. But from what I see and from what I perceive from them, I would say that the future graduates, I'm going to focus on this kind of population. I don't think they project themselves into specific employment models. They first project themselves into what kind of job do I want to have, in what kind of sector do I want to work, maybe in which kind of country or which area in the world I would like to evolve, and how can I fit all this with my values, interests, and personality. And when they mix up all this, then they will switch to this or that employment model. And I would say that whatever the employment model, I think if I have to sum up, and maybe it's a huge summary, but I think they want freedom and safety. I think they want freedom first because they want to make sure that they can develop their full potential to make sense. They don't want bullshit jobs. This is not my expression. This is coming from David Graeber, who is an anthropologist. They don't want bullshit jobs. So your definition of a bullshit job is not mine, but they are very demanding on this. They want to make sure that they've got some kind of added value in what they do, whether it's financial, ecological, social, economic, or political. But they want to make sure that they've got some added value that they can feel in their day-to-day work. So I think they want to be change makers, whether they are into finance, construction, the naval industry, forestry, whatever. And when I was listening to Anne Lebel talking earlier in the morning, and because I worked in the consulting industry, I think consulting industry is on the rise also because youngsters can see that they can switch to projects and make sense because they transform a firm or they transform an activity in a firm through their consulting project. And maybe there's a relationship between the consulting model, like at Capgemini or other big players, and the gig economy. And it's a good mix because youngsters, graduates switch from one project to the other, but they're still part of a firm. So they've got the kind of a freedom mixed with safety. But if I stick to freedom, I think they also want to have some kind of freedom into in their time management. They want to work, they are ready to, but they still want some time for them. So I think with the COVID crisis, the balance between professional life and personal life has been a bit shaken. And I think the model doesn't exist yet. And maybe there will be no model, and it's not a problem. But the work-life balance has been questioned by this COVID crisis, and I think it's a point of attention for the youngsters. So they've got that, they want freedom, but they also want safety. I don't think graduates dream of the gig economy. Again, depending on the jobs and the sectors and the country they evolve in, and for one reason. And maybe it's a very French or maybe too European perspective, and I apologize for this, but you need to mix this freedom and this the added value that you bring to the world and the social safety net that you need. And when I take France, for instance, if you don't have a no-term contract, when you go to a bank as let's say 25-year-old, you want a loan to buy a small flat, it's going to make your life very hard to get a loan if you're into the gig economy, because the banking industry, basically, they won't let you money. So, the marketing around gig economy is okay, and I understand the advantages of it in specific sectors. But then when you switch to everyday problems such as having a loan for the house you want to, or for the small flat you want to buy as a young graduate, then you're stuck. So I would say, yeah, freedom and safety is the kind of balance that they want youngsters or graduates want to have, whatever the employment model is. And not to be too long, but two final remarks. One is uncertainty. I think in the intro remarks earlier this morning, somebody talked about the VUCA world. I think our main job as universities or higher education schools is to make sure that we make graduates comfortable with uncertainty. Make sure that they've got the right package of skills to adapt to any kind of situation, any kind of employment model that is existing or that it doesn't exist yet. And we must be careful at not necessarily developing gig economy within firms. Because if I take, for example, at Lyon Business School, in the past, the communication and marketing department was acting as an agency, as an internal agency for programs, to market themselves and to communicate themselves. And sometimes when you have this kind of functioning and you don't have you lose the sense of belonging, unity, community, of ownership, because it's like you have two firms or many firms in one, and when times are good, it's okay. When times are bad, people just try to find responsibilities into the other. So we need to make a balance between, for students, between freedom and safety, and as workers, to make sure that we find the right balance within our own organization, to make sure that within this mega gig or so gig economy, we still have this kind of ownership into organizations, especially when we work from a distance.
Yeah. So thank you, Nicola. I think a couple of very good points that I walk away with is Gen Z and Gen A, like all of the new generations, want to have their cake and eat it too, right? So they want the safety and they want the freedom. But I absolutely take your point on some of the sort of the government benefits that gig workers or short-term workers lose out on, and we've seen some of that through the pandemic, right? The first people to lose their job may have been gig workers. The people who didn't have unemployment benefits were gig workers, and that really is a good segue to my next question to Atul. So let's focus on India, or let's start off with India. But we've seen a slew of new labor regulations. We've seen sort of short-term work accepted now, legally formalized, so to speak, some benefits coming to these workers. But just give us a sense of the legal landscape here in India. What do some of these changes mean to organizations and, of course, employees? So Atul, I think you may need to unmute yourself. We see you.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
And we hear you now too. Yes.
Thanks so much, Meenal. It's a pleasure to be here and participate in this very, very pertinent and topical subject. So I am going to speak with my lawyer's hat on. That's what I do. And, the discussion is revolving around new employment models and gig workers, right? So let me begin very briefly by talking about what we've been used to so far. The Indian industry has largely been used to, like you said, fixed term or permanent contracts where people are in a clear, well-defined employer-employee relationship. It could be for a couple of years. It could be till retirement. Then there are the casual workers or the seasonal workers that a lot of industries see, where you need people for a short period of time. You hire them as casual workers. The typical, laborers for construction sites and things like that. The biggest model that has developed over the last few decades is the contract worker model, which is where people are employed on the payroll of some third-party vendor and are rendering their services to a ultimate client called the principal employer. Right? These have been the prevalent models in India. Over the years, we've seen gig workers becoming very prevalent too. Uber, Ola, Swiggy, and a lot of tech companies have started banking on the gig worker model, so to speak, right? And that's where the ambiguities have started setting in. How do you classify gig workers? Are they your employees? Are they independent contractors, consultants? Are they entitled to any sort of benefits that you would give to your regular employees, right? And before that, I also want to talk about the fact that there are, for the past many years, there have been consultants, right, who've been acting for organizations in multiple sectors, like Manu mentioned, right? Talented folks, intellectual input, they are in a position to sort of demand what they are charging, what fees they will ask, what benefits they will get, right? Again, that has traditionally fallen out of the employer-employee model. Now, with the new codes, the government has tried to give recognition or acknowledge the various types of models they are and maybe add more to it. So if you were to pick up the Social Security Code, you will now find at least 7 or 8 different definitions. There is gig workers, platform workers, home-based workers, self-employed workers, unorganized workers, wage workers, interstate migrant workers, sales promotion employees, fixed-term employees, contract workers, right? This is a huge laundry list of new definitions that the codes are now proposing, right? Keeping aside the fact that this could have been simpler, I think the positive that comes out of it is that there is now going to be explicit recognition of these different types of working models, right? And it will help deal with the ambiguities and disputes that we are seeing world over. Just recently, there has been a ruling of the Supreme Court in UK where it has held that gig workers are classified as workers under UK legislation, right? Which gives them access to certain benefits like leave entitlements, fixed working hours, and things like that, right? Not the same right as employees get. That's specific to the UK, model, but they do have access to some rights. In India, we haven't yet seen such litigation. Nothing that has actually been filed and sustained through till the end. And that's also, in a sense, reflective of our economy and culture. We are 1 billion plus people. Everyone is looking for jobs. Everyone is looking for opportunities where they can earn money. If that happens through a gig working model, then so be it, right? It's better than being unemployed. So I think what the government is now trying to do is achieve that right balance between classifying different types of employment models and trying to lay down that, okay, clearly, if you're a gig worker, by definition, you're working outside the employer-employee construct. If you're a platform worker, you're working outside the employer-employee construct. But we do recognize that you have certain basic needs. So we are going to create a framework for social security for you, right? I think what this is going to do is it's going to make adoption of these models a lot more easy and streamlined for a lot of organizations. The consultant type models that Manu and others are talking about will now sort of tag into the gig worker definition. And you will find that if you're hiring people as consultants, you might need to then participate in some form of social security schemes as well, right? Yeah. Now, keeping aside these types of models, which are, I think, a little bit more pertinent to some types of industries, right? And not everyone is going to be able to utilize them. We also need to focus on what the new codes are doing for the industries, the regular industries like manufacturing industry or more plain Jane servicing industries, IT, ITS sector. They've largely the mainstay of these industries have largely been permanent employment, fixed term employment to a certain extent, and contract workers. The new codes are also bringing about pretty big changes when it comes to that. Contract workers as a definition has been overhauled. There is now an exception that is being made for service arrangements, where I might have a service arrangement with a vendor. And so long as the workers that are being deployed to render those services are sort of regularly employed with that vendor who appraises them, gives them increments from time to time, they'll now fall outside the ambit of the contract labor model, right? That's going to make compliance a lot easier for the industry. But at the same time, and this is where there's going to be a significant concern, is that there's now a clear bar on engaging anyone through the contract labor model in a core activity or a core function. Right? So you will really need to relook as to whether you can use contract workers or staff augmentation type of services, right, to perform work or activities which are core to your organization. I think continued use of contract workers for security, housekeeping, facilities, those types of activities are perfectly fine. But if you've relied on contract workers to do hard coding or assembly line work where you're a manufacturing sector, you will really need to relook as to how that's going to work for you going forward once the codes are in place, right? Are you going to be able to continue those models? Or do you want to or need to shift some of those people into maybe project-driven or fixed-term employment models, right? So that's something that the industry will need to take a close look at and realign their org chart and structures once these codes are in place. For fixed-term employees, the codes have now made it clear that irrespective of tenure, they will be entitled to some additional benefits like gratuity. Yeah. That's going to make hiring on a fixed-term model a lot more lucrative and attractive for organizations. I hear clients tell us that, I want to hire people for 1 year or 2 years because I know that's the duration of my project. but nobody wants to join me as a fixed-term employee. Everyone is running and gunning for a permanent job, right? That's going to change. People will be a lot more receptive to these types of models because they come on the back of additional benefits that they will enjoy.
So
I think then
sorry,
Sure.
One quick question. So a step in the right direction by the government with the new labor changes? Yep.
I certainly think so. And,
Okay.
and that's a good way of summarizing it. I think there is still going to be teething issues and areas where clarifications are required, but certainly a step in the right direction, right? I think the area which could have used more, more progressive changes is the general rules that have the inflexible rules, right, around hiring and firing that the industry currently faces, which honestly, if you look back at the legislation, are the very genesis for why there is contract labor abuse, right? People want flexibility. They don't want to worry about disputes. They don't want to worry about going to the government for permission if they have to lay off some employees, right? That inflexibility has fed into all these multitude of different models and their abuse that we anyway see today. The courts haven't done too much around that, but hopefully with these other changes, the recognition of these other types of models, industry will still have incremental levels of flexibility in how they organize their workforce after these codes are in place completely today.
Thanks, Atul. I think a great summary of what we are seeing in India in the legal environment. So for me, I sort of couple of summary points before I move on to the next question. And in the interest of time, we'll take a couple of more, one for you, Nitin, and one for you, Nicola, at the end of the conversation. But from what I'm hearing, the pandemic, business conditions have made it more necessary for organizations to look at alternate models. We're seeing employees, which are supported by the legal frameworks, also more open to different employment models. And that gets me to my next question, Nitin. Is this, we heard Manu talk about media and the presence of short-term work there, right? I come from manufacturing and we're nowhere close to the number of people she has on short-term, especially on the skill side. So what should organizations or leadership keep in mind as they explore some of these models, with the legal framework and I think also the business environment? Do they really have a choice anymore? Maybe, maybe not. And if they don't, what is the right fit for them? What should they keep in mind as they evaluate some of these models? So Nitin, I think you may be also on mute, if you can please unmute.
Okay. Yes. Right. So I was saying that, honestly, there is no one answer to this whole question. My typical suggestion to companies is that, and as bad as it may be sometimes for a business like us, but, benchmarks only get you so much. What works for a company X may not necessarily work for someone else. So I think the first thing I would say going forward is, I think, clarity in terms of the consumer, the customer that you have, and how will you deliver value? How will you use technology? How will you use distribution models for that? I think in generic org structures or org charts, the way we actually see them are anyways getting disrupted in companies today, from agile teams to pods to how do you kind of come together to kind of, deliver work, build focus, etc., and those things. So I think in that context, you can solve for now, which is a tactical solution, which is, do I need gig workers? Will they help me get more cost effective? Will it help me replace short-term skill for the moment? But I think most organizations that are actually thinking, big and hard on this are actually taking a much longer point of view on this one. They're taking a 10, 15, 20-year perspective on this to say, what would my business model look like? Where would work happen from? How would manufacturing happen? Manufacturing 4.2 and the impact it would have on my larger talent strategy. And in that context, where does gig come in? Where does technology come in? So I think it's those kinds of things. It's very early days, but I think I said this when I started off, that some of these things are coming into place because, if you see what's really happening, even from a cost perspective, it's minimum wages. I think at some period of time, countries and including India will start talking of living wages. What's the right from a living wage perspective? What's an ideal thing in that composition? What are the right kind of benefits and things to provide? So that transition or change will continue to happen. But I think it's a more long-term thinking in terms of how models would change, and each company would have its own very unique journey.
Thanks, Nitin. Nicola, to you again. I call you the supply side. I don't know why, but historically, companies have leveraged Campus Connect and connecting with students more as a pipeline building effort. But very, very quickly, Nicola, are universities planning of a structured model to help companies and, of course, students, but to help companies bridge this short-term requirement?
Yeah, I'm gonna be quick. Don't worry. Maybe I think universities and higher education institutions can contribute to the generation of new employment models in two ways. The first one is to take into account the fact that many jobs will be replaced, many human jobs will be replaced by digitalization, data science, artificial intelligence, robotization. So the question that we universities have to answer and to answer collectively with firms is, what is the added value of jobs done by humans? I mean, and the youngsters and the graduates coming up, they have this question in mind. Will I be able to have jobs that would not exist today, but that will be not robotized in 5 years' time or in 10 years' time? And this is where the package of skills that we equip them with is necessary for them to evolve in any kind of situation. So that's issue number one. Issue number two, I think, is to make sure that we don't build walls, but bridges between initial training and continuing education or executive education. In wherever in the world you've got, you need to go to undergrad, then grad, then you go to work, then you come back for an MBA or executive MBA, you go for a DBA, etc., etc. But these kind of populations are being trained in separate rooms, but they do work together in firms. So what we need to invent, I think, is, as universities and higher ed institutions, is programs where different kinds of generations work together. So let's say, 20 to 25-year-old generations, and people 40, 50, 60, they can work together on specific projects, and these projects can actually answer some issues expressed by firms, and firms can actually pay for this as a kind of a new kind of consulting made by different kinds of generations. So I think these are for me the two practical issues that we need to work on to make sure that we make our youngsters fit into the new kind of employment models.
Yeah. So what I heard you say, Nicholas, is it's definitely possible, right? That's my takeaway, to have a look at structured ways to make this work for both organizations and students. So with that, I'd like to thank all the panel members. Manu had to drop off, but thanks, Nitin, Nicola, and Atul for your time. Let me take 30 seconds and quickly, at a very simple level, summarize what I got from the discussion. So one is, I think, new employment models, whether they're short-term models or remote working models, are probably here to stay, and they're increasing. There are some companies that do it today. However, not everybody does it. But we're seeing, with the legal framework and also maybe the business context of the pandemic, we're seeing that both organizations as well as employees are more open to taking up some of these new models, even if they were not maybe 5-10 years ago, right? So there's a definite positive inclination on both sides to adopt that. And I think third, as organizations and companies look to implement it, keep the long-term view in mind. Don't look at only employment model as a strategy, but look at your digital strategy, your other business strategy in line to make sure it's aligning. And I think fourth, just on the micro level, there are certain challenges that will come with, from a culture, HR point of view, that will come with implementing this. And of course, there are challenges with respect to IP risk that Manu highlighted, and some other very specific legal risks that may come with individual contracts, which are very different than till retirement, which also need to be kept in mind. So those are my takeaways. Thank you again to the panel. Thank you very much for your time. And I would hand it over now to back to Srikanth. Srikanth, over to you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Minal. Really appreciate very effectively maneuvering this, and thanks for bringing the most effective learning for all of us at this point. And we gain new insights on the gig workers spoken about by Nitin and Manu, on Generation A that Nicola coined, and multiple formats of employment that legislations are defining, very well explained by Atul. Thank you, everyone, for an enriching discussion. We really appreciate your time to join us. And we have a brief video before we move into the next, that we could not play yesterday. Can we have the video, please?
Traveling, no matter how, where, or why. What matters is who, their desires, aspirations, needs. For more than 30 years, we've been connecting travelers to their journeys, observing and anticipating what matters to us all, innovating and making real what once was a dream. At Amadeus, we develop trusted technology that puts the traveler first and that powers your business. Together, we build better journeys for billions of people. Amadeus, seeing the journey through the traveler's eyes.
So yesterday we had Mani Ganeshan from Amadeus, APAC leader, and this video didn't play well, so apologies for that, but we are compensating for that by doing this now. I'm very excited about the next panel discussion. This panel discussion is on a topic that we all are talking about, but the question is, are we doing anything significant to address it, and what actually we should be doing? Mental well-being. It's about social and emotional well-being of people. Positive employees are likely to be engaged, and engaged employees are productive. This is a business case, no-brainer. By nature, human beings are emotional, we know. At work and workplace, we experience many emotions, positive or negative, on a day-to-day basis. Now, the challenge is to create an organization where employees will have more and more positive emotions coming to them. A culture where recognition, forgiveness, sharing, caring, smiles, gratefulness, these kind of things are promoted. It's likely that employees will be in positive state for longer periods if this happens. Now, what is the role of a CEO? What is the role of a people manager and role of HR in all of this? How can mental well-being become a key agenda of leadership? If ignored, how will it impact the organization? Our panel of eminent speakers and experts may provide answers to these questions and guidance on this very important topic. Now, we have Suvarna Mishra helping us moderate this expertly. Suvarna heads human resources at Sodexo Benefits and Reward Services India. Her professional strengths and interests lie in defining HR strategy, creation of compelling employer brand, aligning all aspects of the organization to drive engagement, adoption of meaningful technology in HR processes, driving a high-performance culture, pre- and post-HR strategy in M&As, and enabling diversity in workforce. In her career spanning 17 years, Suvarna has previously led and managed multiple roles in organizations like DHL, Aditya Birla Group, Qualcomm, and IBM. She is joined by luminaries in this panel that includes Yash Mahadik, President, Global Human Resources, and co-lead Business Transformation, Lupin Global. Sunny Iqbal, Partner and co-leader Family Business Practice, Egon Zender. Shalini Nair Kumar, Senior Director, People and Culture, Communications and Brand and Facilities, Amadeus Labs, Bengaluru. And Dr. Marcus Rani, Champion of Wellbeing and Founder and CEO, Human Age. Welcome all and look forward to an engaging discussion. Over to you, Suvarna.
Thank you, Shrikant. I hope I'm audible enough. A very good afternoon to all in the audience, or good evening or good morning as the case may be, depending on from where you are joining us today. if I may just take a minute, it's no news that employers today are building resilience in their workplace so that employees develop skills to manage not just the workplace stress, but also overall well-being. Resilience, as we know, enables a positive approach to work and overall outlook on life, which in turn enables better problem-solving skills and helps to maintain motivation levels of employees at an organization level. Given its many benefits, many companies today are providing access to employee assistance programs, doctors on calls, access to fitness centers, not just physically, but also off late digitally enabled fitness through the various ventures that have sprung up, particularly in the last 3-4 years, all aiming at holistic and comprehensive well-being. But are these measures enough? Let's just find out from our eminent panel today. This panel that we have today consists of leaders who are very familiar faces in the HR fraternity particularly, and actually, if I was to say, need no introduction in my opinion. We have Yashwant Mahadik, or Yash as we call him, who's recognized as amongst top 50 HR powerful professionals coming from India. Currently at Lupin, Yash also has academic interests and works in conceptualizing strategic HR curriculum in various global management universities of repute. We also have Sunny Iqbal with us today in the panel, and he brings his insights from his more than 25 years of experience, rich experience, if I may say so, in leadership advisory and consulting. Sonny co-leads Egon Zender's Global Family Business Advisory, focusing on succession planning and talent management. Shalini from Amadeus wears multiple leadership hats in the organization. She has been lauded by industry for her leadership skills and has won several awards in a row for her leadership skills. Most inspirational human resources leader twice in a row. And under her able leadership, Amadeus has been accorded with various certifications like GPW, Time, and Dream Companies to Work, and many more. Lastly, to make this panel discussion more interesting, even more interesting, we have Dr. Marcus Rane, whose prior medical healthcare profession, where he used to practice clinical medicine in the UK, and later donning so many different kind of roles, from being strategic advisor and investor in healthcare and life sciences industry, to being a published author recently, having launched his book, and a digital talk show host, also being a senior fellow in the Atlantic Council. The list of his varied interests seem endless to me, but I'm sure this interesting panel would throw some lights and share with us interesting ideas when it comes to our topic of mental well-being and building resilience at the workplace today. A small hygienic announcement for our viewers. There is a chat option on your screen in the webinar tool towards the right, where you can post your questions, and just when we have the first available opportunity, we will try and take them. All right, let's kickstart this discussion. I would like to do so by drawing a little parallel between the challenges faced by Amadeus, which, as I hear, has been acutely hit during the pandemic for the nature of work that it is into, of travel automation, and as compared to Lupin Global, one of the few organizations which Yash told us has never stopped working for even a day during the lockdown. So my questions to both of you, Shalini and Yash. Maybe Yash, you could start with this. What are the kind of challenges in managing employee well-being that you face in your organization in the new normal? And by the way, is there a new normal?
Suvarna, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. It's a very important question. Okay, it's a very important question, and happy to share from my experiences. So yes, we, being a pharmaceutical company, we never stopped working because by law, being under the essential services and commodities, we were required to work throughout the pandemic. And of course, you know, in the first 2 months, though our factories, and that's where we have to work. So we had to keep our factories on, we had to keep our R&D facilities on, we had to keep our clinical trial facilities on. Only the offices were shut down. And the reason we have to keep them on is because we make life-saving drugs, and we were also making, COVID-saving drugs. So we had to keep on. Now, the first 2 months was very challenging because you have seen, and I don't want to go into that of the migrant labor. So even if our factories were on, our R&D facilities were on, not more than 10 to 15% of people were coming in. Okay. However, we still had to keep them on. And those 2 months, actually, we got to learn and to create a very safe workplace. Okay. And a lot of things went into it. For example, we still need to provide transportation to people who travel from cities to our factories, which are usually, 20 to 30 kilometers away. So if a bus used to carry 40 people, now the bus carries only 15 to 20 people because of social distancing. First there was this thermal gun checks for your temperatures, etc. Then we had to, put contactless, checks, which required a lot of capital expenditure. Okay, including redesigning the cafeteria, running your offices at factories into shifts. Okay, so much that went into it, and I'm proud to say that we led the way within the pharma industry, and the pharma industry showed the way, on how to operate a workplace safely during a pandemic. And many industries and thereafter learned from it, and which is something that really gives me a sense of pride, if you may like. Now, when it comes to well-being and answering that question, and these are 2 cents worth from my side. You see, one thing that I've observed and I learned from this pandemic or the situation was a lot of us, are privileged because, we may be at senior positions. We have a car, we have a driver. Of course, we had lost the driver also, but we are privileged. Okay, we live in homes which probably have a spare room like this where we can operate, work from. But 80 to 90% of the people don't have this. They travel by local train or metro or bus. They barely have a room where they can work from at home. So these were very ordinary people under extraordinary pressure. Okay. And on top of that, the pressure they had was, will my job remain? And I remember doing an employee insights amongst our employees. And what I realized fast, and I advised our management, worked with our leaders, and we said is that people are not looking at, perks, or benefits, or, a lot of those online, engagement social that you do, okay, of trying to get a guest speaker to engage with them and their families. Employees were saying, this is fine. This is not what they needed, was assurance. Can you imagine? They needed an assurance that I will have a job. I will have a livelihood. I have life insurance. If something happens to me, I have enough hospitalization insurance. This is what was the need of the employees. Okay. And I think that was creating a lot of mental pressure. And that is why the mental well-being came to forefront. And, one thing, again, I say this with tremendous pride, and not that, HR professionals were the only ones, but everyone played their role, but HR led the way. I'm very proud of my team. Okay. HR showed the way, they led the way. HR's role changed. They became heads of business continuity. Okay. They became heads of crisis management. They became people who were responsible. And health and wellness has always been on our agendas, but it gained top priority. Okay. And you should never, ever dismiss or discount what any of your employee is going through, because some of us, may not understand their struggles. So I think that was the issue. And I think companies, and I'm very proud that companies like Lupin addressed it tremendously well. So like even today, our Mumbai, and what's happening in Mumbai, we had controlled it very well, but the past 7 days, it's on the rise again. We have opened our office since 4th of January, but we have not made it compulsory for anyone to attend. In fact, we have made it compulsory for people who do not have personal transport to work from home. 20% of our jobs, we have made them permanently work from home. It's a pilot we are doing, okay? And that has created so much of assurance, okay, amongst people, because it is possible. Those who have to go and work in the factories and R&D labs who cannot work from home, There's a significant investment that has gone in, which hit, it affects your cost structure. So it was a hit we all took. But that is what provides mental wellness, rather than some of these tick mark programs of getting a guest speaker and, sending them yoga links for their families and all, which is important. But that's not what it is. People required assurance to feel mentally well, then supported by various mental wellness programs. So that is what I would like to say, and pause there and hand it over to Shalini.
Right. Thank you, Yash. It was really insightful, to listen to a completely different sector going through a completely different kind of challenge altogether. So again, Amadeus, I think it was interesting that we just had a video play before this. So again, we are in the travel technology space. We take great pride in the fact that we are the world leader in providing travel technology. So every time you go to the airport, board a flight, take a railway ticket, or check into a hotel, we have travel solutions going across all areas of the travel industry. Just to give you an idea of the kind of volumes we are talking about, in 2019 we are talking about almost 650 million bookings, and per second more than 20 bookings that happen on our platforms. 1.9 billion passengers onboarded in 2019. So I'm just giving you an idea of the scale at which we are operating. And cut to 2020 February, we already started to see a hit on the travel industry. And obviously we were the first ones to experience all the disruption the virus was causing. Now just think about it, for an industry, for an organization so well placed, doing so well, suddenly the challenge completely changed. And we knew that travel is almost come to a standstill. And for the first time, maybe we were having more cancellations on our platforms than bookings. So yes, we were also working. We were also really busy during this entire lockdown period, but for a completely different reasons, because our platforms, our technology had to evolve to this new challenge of cancellations, disruption. Today, there could be a flight announced, but tomorrow it's cancelled. So what do you do with rearranging all of the people who have booked on the flight, countries, bubbles, and all that good stuff? So yes, we were busy. Our people were really having new challenges to work on. But the fact that I want to focus on is on the piece of resilience. And like Yash talked about, people were really anxious whether they would have a job anymore because the industry was completely disrupted. Will there be a pay cut? What actions will the organization take for cost optimization? What employee measures will the organization need to take if travel was not to recover? So these were all the kind of anxiety that people were going through. And I would start with resilience right at the leadership level and go down, right? I mean, at the leadership level, you're dealing with industry disruption, your own organization and business completely being disrupted, work from home and a new way of completely working, engaging people, managing talent, etc. And then, of course, looking at how you support our partners and the industry to recover. So while you're going through all this, how do you take your people and the organization along? How do you build resilience? Talk about the managers. I mean, I was just thinking about the managers that you have today in the industry. Many of them have about 10 to 12 years of experience. They've probably never seen a bad year, particularly in the IT industry. The IT industry has been booming for the last decade or so. The last downturn that we saw was 2008-9, but in India, the effect was felt really very less. We recovered really fast. Many of them have not seen this side of business, of crisis. And then as managers, how do you manage yourself and lead teams? Because we had managers coming and telling us, my employees and team members are asking these questions to me every day. What do I do? How do I support them? So I think that was the challenge we are dealing with. What did we do? A few things that I think really worked well. First of all, I think active and open communication. Be it the CEO, the CHRO, the local leadership team, we made sure that we were constantly communicating to the people. What is the business scenario? How are we tackling the business? How did we manage to raise funds so that we go through these crises and tide through these times? What kind of cost optimization measures are we putting through? Are there any employee impacts? what are those? At what scale are those? When will they come in place? How will we tide through that? So I think that was one big aspect of being very open, fair, and transparent. I can't tell you the number of sessions that we did last year with staff briefings, manager briefings were seen never before. Like they were done at a scale that we had never done before. The idea was keep communication channels open so that people could listen to the leaders and share their concerns, get a perspective. While all this was going on, we also made sure that we continue to invest in some things like learning. Are there continuously learning opportunities for people? Are there opportunities for internal mobility? Are there opportunities for career growth? We did a lot of investment on health and wellness. So the idea I'm trying to bring here is it's not just about doing health and wellness initiatives, but it's about creating positivity through these challenging times and showing our people that we care, that every action that the organization is doing is to think about them first. And I think that is what gives them the confidence. And the last piece that I really want to talk about is about enabling first line managers. We did a lot of work around helping first line managers tide through these crises and take their teams along. What we launched was something called as Learning Wednesdays. Every Wednesday, we were sharing curated content with managers, very, very contextual to help them on a day-to-day basis to deal with this crisis and to work with their teams. And with that, I'll just stop right now and probably we can discuss any of these later in detail.
Thank you very much, Yash and Shalini. To quickly wrap up your 3 points that led to a successful management of the crisis, Shalini, were active and open communication. No amount of employee briefs would be considered more in such times. We totally agree. The continued investments in training and growth also would have given a sense of normalcy in these abnormal times. And yes, curated content trying to target the dissatisfaction or the concerns and fears at such times would have definitely helped Amadeus employees and also perhaps their families tackle the situation better. And thank you for hinting at the efforts of leadership in managing the stressful times. It is a good segue to the next section where I would like to steer this discussion towards the direction of closed chambers and corner cabins. Which tend to be opaque. We can't see through what's happening, but that's where all the decision making is happening, and that's where perhaps the biggest of burden lies as well. So, my question to you, Mr. Sani Iqbal, for all the experience that you have and all the discussions you've been having, particularly in the last couple of years of difficult times, COVID being one, there have been others, unfortunately, as well in India and globally. So, if I may ask, through the lens of leadership solutions and advisory that you wear, what were the few things that you see could break down resilience in people at the corporate world? Maybe more so you could touch about the leadership particularly.
Thank you, Suvarna, and also thank you, Yash and Shalini, for saying things that will actually perhaps weave in and gave me a few thoughts as I was going to respond. A very broad question, Suvarna, but I'll try and tackle it the best that I can. What were we dealing with as we got into the 21st century and we were talking to our clients and trying to address advisory issues, both in the boardroom for the board as well as the CEO? We were dealing with disruption. We were dealing with tech changes. We were dealing with Gen Y, Z. We were dealing with digital, renewable, lots of things that we were dealing with. But we saw them in reflection, in hindsight. We saw them as almost linear. It didn't happen together and it didn't bust the way we saw the last year. And while I'll try and raise this question beyond the last year, because we sort of tend to go back into the last year and get bogged down there, I think we saw some traits and some qualities that distinguished leaders in the boardroom. And I actually started looking at resilience. Resilience became quite a topic in our firm. And I started looking at resilience in two ways. Sort of it when I saw some people carrying a big rock as if it was weighing on them. And there were some other people during those days that I saw who were able to hold that rock a little effortlessly and actually start, pushing it back up the hill or being able to cope with it. And along with a few colleagues, and we just wondered as to what was it. And a lot of it touches on this topic of resilience. It talks about mental well-being and so on. And if I'll try and break it down and first address the person who is carrying the rock and being burdened by it. And Yash and Shalini both touched upon this mental piece and the mind. And we saw that while what resonated there and rested there, how did it manifest itself at work? And we saw big leaders who showed signs of broken or breaking resilience. A lot of it was manifested in being protectionist. It was manifested in blame. There were biases that we saw coming out. There was a command and control approach, and that command and control actually went into wanting to do many things together and getting involved in a lot of things that were perhaps going on, which they typically would not have gotten involved in another time, but they were involved in now. And as I say this, some of us can think of these examples of perhaps seeing other people doing this or doing it ourselves even at times. And this is where we saw teams cracking up. We saw people leaving roles and going away, perhaps sometimes to a company with a smaller brand or a smaller role. And when we asked them, why are you doing this? Or why are you looking for a change? And they said, no one cares. So these were things where we saw manifest themselves where it wasn't quite going right. And where we saw it going right, and there are a few examples that just stick to my mind, and perhaps some of it has to do with experience, because there were some industries that had been battered before, and they were the ones that were fastest to recover. But there were some that had not experienced it before, where clearly the leader made a difference. I can think of someone who even had sales plans done in about 2 weeks or 3 weeks on what that revised sales incentive would look like for that organization and how they would communicate it. These leaders had clarity of thought. There was clear purpose. They had some sort of understanding. I'm talking about hindsight. I'm not sure I recognized it immediately then. But when I group people together, that's the way I end up seeing it. There was a clear why behind what they were doing. I think Yash or Shalini touched upon, or someone said, use the word assurance. And assurance is the self-assurance is what I saw manifest itself. There was a clear strength orientation. It's a new word. I'm not sure it'll resonate with everyone, but in simpler description, they knew what their strengths were and what they could do well and what others could do well. And they were able to ask others and invite others to do things well that they realized that they didn't know well themselves. Strangely enough, these people also took care of themselves. We talked about mental well-being and care. And these were the chaps who actually, or ladies, who went out for a walk or exercised or found ways to look after themselves so that they could replenish. They engaged in a different way, and there was a clear sense of identity and of being in control. Of course, this has grown in the last 5 or 6 months. This was manifested in smaller groups, but it grew and expanded, and a lot more people have demonstrated this now. But the most stark reminder for me of those days is my phone rang at 4:30 in the morning. And I answered it. And there was a very senior person who was going for a board meeting the next day. And he said, I do not know what to say to my board. I just do not know. I'm under pressure from my board. I'm not sure my board is clear what they want to do, but I am certainly not clear what to do. I don't think I can last here anymore. That was not a sign of mental well-being. Luckily, this person has recovered and recovered well now, but this is what the pressure was. And I know we've talked about the front line and we've talked about mid-managers, but I think I should bring the boardroom and the corner of his back here. So resilience for us was best seen where leaders were able to recharge and not those who were just enduring. And as I close, all I'll say is that these were the people who we saw aligned with their North Star, and they believed in their actions and what they were doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunny, for your insights on what it takes to be resilient from the place where resilience is drawn out for the rest of the organization. Some clear takeaways were clarity of thought with which decision making was happening, distinguished more successful leaders from the rest. Also, the strength orientation of more effective leaders in a manner where they delegated what was the strength of the others and focused for themselves basis their own strength areas. And of course, leaders who recharged responded better with flying colors compared to leaders who were just fighting hard to sustain themselves. So thank you very much for those points. If I may just ask a follow-up question on this, somewhat related, particularly when it comes to leadership, what would be your views on the elements of empathy and sensitivity in communication that originates from leadership at public forums or in private conversations with their teams? How important and how effective is that? We've had some cases where even unintended insensitivity has hit the organization very hard when it comes to reputation, and also has had some massive effects on the overall performance of the organization. But if I may just invite all the panel members here to give their bit on empathy and creation of sensitivities, particularly from leadership end of the organization.
I think you're talking about something that was in the press for a large audit firm where a chair was asked for being less inclusive, perhaps, for want of any other word.
Or maybe he was just giving a pep talk, which he thought could raise the morale, but for some who were hit and were struggling with the management of COVID, it was not received as well as it was intended. Nonetheless, the issue remains.
Okay, so since nobody is going for that one, so let me just give my quick views on that. So definitely, I think sensitivity, empathizing with people, understanding where they are coming from, their context is really important. While there could be organizational decisions that we probably cannot change and they need to be taken, but can they be taken and communicated with more empathy, with more understanding of the context of where people are coming from? Are we okay to, as leaders, to spend time making people understand the rationale of why, the why behind every decision? Why are we taking this decision? Why did we have to do these measures? And be patient to say that, okay, sometimes maybe I would need to explain the same thing 3 times, 4 times, or 5 times in different sessions till people are able to feel reassured or comfortable and understand the context. And are we able to do that? I think that is where I would come from, saying align people, take them along. And one thing I think which is really underrated is sometimes also having a sense of humor, right? A lot of times in leadership, in our leadership roles, we are so caught up by saying the right thing, looking so prim and proper, or looking like an executive or speaking like one, having gravitas. Sometimes we miss what a sense of humor and sometimes what we can communicate on a lighter note with people and make it connect with people more. And I think that is something all leaders would probably need to inculcate a lot more.
Maybe I'll say something and keep it very short, that having empathy and demonstrating empathy are actually 2 different things. I mean, you can have empathy and not show it. and people actually want to see that empathy and feel it. So leaders don't make that distinction. Very often they have empathy and it stays within them. And I think it's important to bring it out and show it to your direct reports or to the larger workforce.
Very well put. Demonstration of empathy as important as wearing it. Yash, you feel very strongly when it comes to topics of empathy and culture in organization. Would you like to add? I know you're pressed for time and you have another appointment very shortly, but just before we miss you, maybe we could hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the points made by Shalini, but most of them from Sunny, which are pearls of wisdom, because Sunny is such a senior leader and with such tremendous leadership insights that he has. The two things that I learned, and I want to build on that, is, and he said, that the self-assured leader made the biggest difference, and that was amazing, because before you give assurance to others, you need to be self-assured yourself, and that was so important. Okay. Apart from that, yes, answering your question or just adding to this, you see, culture is a bedrock of any organization, especially if it is going to be a perpetual organization. I'm not saying perpetual organization as defined by law, okay? But perpetual organization is the goal and aim of any organization, that you want to exist. And what actually drives, that purpose is the culture that the organization has. It's the bedrock. So we don't want to go into that. However, this past 1 year was the one that actually the culture, the leadership traits, okay, of that organization were tested to the hilt. As Sunny said, there's a difference in being, having empathy and demonstrating empathy. So there are a lot of leaders in an organization which are known to have certain traits. But this past 1 year was the one which actually showed which are those leaders who demonstrated it and which are those leaders who did. Okay. And I don't want to go down, but we all saw, and I don't want to take names of companies or people, but we saw some very senior chairmen and CEOs, were brought under a lot of pressure. And in fact, some were fired for showing insensitivity towards their people by saying that, don't make a mole out of a mountain, stop moaning, stop complaining. You can't do that. Okay. These are unprecedented times which we haven't seen in our lifetimes, and which I hope, and God forbid, we don't see in the remaining part of our lifetime or someone else sees them. Okay. This was a real threat, a situation which hit us, which we didn't know what's going to happen. And that's what we were dealing with. When you're dealing with an unknown, the character gets tested the best of an organization, of its leaders, and of its culture. Okay. I think many organizations learned the importance of doing all these things which they hadn't. And the last one I would add here is, I think the technology played one of the biggest roles. Okay. So it's not that a lot of technologies were innovated for the pandemic. A lot of them already existed. Say, for example, Zoom or Microsoft Teams. We had them. We had them for the past 3, 4, 5 years since, we all have Microsoft, you have Teams. Teams was nothing but was business for Skype. And business for Skype was nothing but Skype, right? Which Microsoft, and we all had it with us. But today, the utilization of Microsoft Teams for connecting, for talking, a lot of things have changed, such as, if I may add, now the organizations also have tested and tasted low-cost operating models. For example, people are still able to do their large sales conferences, 5,000 people, 7,000 people, 10,000 people, like the ones we have, by using technology. Okay. Now, there is a question that remains. Is it that effective as you would do it when you take them to Dubai or New Zealand or, somewhere else, which you do every year, versus you do it virtually? But the fact is, you do it at 1/8 of the cost. 1/8 of the cost. And I think that's going to become the new norm. And that was the question, Suvarna, you asked. what is the new norm? So I don't think so there's a new normal yet, and that is evolving. One thing for sure we know is that we have to learn to live with COVID. Even after the vaccinations are done, this virus is going to be there. Okay. Now, whether it weakens, it strengthens, we don't know. But like how we have learned to live with measles or polio or, the rest of, deadly diseases that exist, we have to learn to live with COVID, and that time will come. Don't force it. And if not in your area of control, don't try to comment on it. But just manage, be sensitive to your people, to your workforce, to your customers, and support them in any which way possible. And any company which does it will only come out stronger. And I'm proud to, I really feel proud to work for Lupin, which actually has turned out to be one of the role models, in how they're doing it, in India, from India, rest of the world. And I'm sure many other companies are doing it, like Shalini's company is doing it. Egon Zender is doing it. Everyone does it at that level. And that's great. That's the positive that has come out of this pandemic. So I just wanted to add and say those things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yash. On that note, an advice of being sensitive and supportive and also demonstrate empathy as much as you have it. May I now move from these side effects of the pandemic and the other ills we have faced of late to spend a little time on the diagnosis and prognosis and also the causes of the rising stress that our workforce feels today. There has been a rising pandemic, perhaps the worst of all, which is lesser acknowledged, even lesser spoken of. In other words, called stress, anxiety, mental health issues, or the much feared term called depression. Dr. Marcus, may I invite you to this discussion and talk about a little of your previous works and for the launch of the new platform called Human Edge, that you ran a massive poll for across organizations to find major causes of stress, especially in workforce context. What did you find?
Firstly, bonsoir, Suvarna, pour nos participants français. Je suis très excité d'être ici. Merci pour votre temps. I thought it'd be good to. It's great to be here and listening for everyone. Look, for anyone who's read the book that's recently come out over my shoulder at the Human Edge, you'd know that the area of human physiology in extreme conditions is something that I've dedicated my career towards. I've been studying stress in different manifestations. It began with climbing Everest and looking at the effect of low oxygen, then spending time in the Arctic Circle and how the extreme cold can impact our stress response, our heart rate variability. I worked at NASA with astronauts, with fighter pilots, etc. So what was really fascinating for me over the last 5 or 6 years now doing this in India is how the mental implications are beginning to affect stress, what stress really means, and how it therefore plays itself out. So when the Prime Minister announced the Janta curfew around, I think it was 16 to 17th of March last year, and we went into lockdown, I started to do a weekly poll with the organizations that I work with. And 2020 was a very busy year for me, honestly. I must have done, I think, 200 plus engagements with large organizations across the world. And the question I would often ask is, number one, how stressed are you today on a scale of 1 to 10? Very simple question. And then secondly, what's contributing to that stress? And what I saw was this incredible sinusoidal relationship between time along the x-axis and stress score along the y-axis. And I write a lot in Forbes, and I've published this as a series there as well. And what was happening, interestingly, number one, is how the stress response was beginning to change. So if I remind us all of the early days of lockdown, you may remember it was associated with a little bit of a honeymoon period. A lot of folks believe that this was a 3 to 4 week holiday or duration or time off from the office. And I actually saw stress levels plummet, and they went down from the average around 5 to just over 4. And that's when a lot of companies were then beginning to engage with employees online, adoption engagement services were being run, etc. Then lockdown 2 happened. Prime Minister came on about 3 weeks after that, and he announced in his candid style that lockdown 2 was going to happen. Then lockdown 3 happened, and the realization hit us that this was not going to go away at all. The Western world was getting badly hit. Our economy shrank by 29%, etc., etc. And stress levels really went up, and it went up to close to 8 out of 10. So that's almost a doubling of the stress response. But what was also interesting is the percentage of people that were polling in a stress score of 8 and above, so something I considered extreme, jumped from 23% to 37%. Now, that's a very significant number of people that went up around that. And then it stayed at that level for a very long period of time. And right now it's averaging at between 6 to 6.2 when I conduct this. So it's beginning to dip down again for a variety of reasons. And I believe for a lot of us, we've come to that recognition phase. And I believe the next phase will be transformation, which maybe we could talk about later on. But what was an interesting pattern to note was that irrespective of geography, irrespective of seniority, irrespective of industry, the same patterns were beginning to be seen, particularly when it came to the second question, which I would ask, which is, why are you stressed today? The number one reason, Sonny spoke about that and Yash as well, was the uncertainty of work. People were just scared of what was going to happen to their work environment, their job, whether their job would even be relevant in the next normal, never mind trying to define what the new normal was. So that was the first issue. The second was our physical health. Of course, COVID, the impact on ourselves, on our family, people around us, our teams. And the third was the deterioration in our relationships, both personal and professional. So it's almost like we were descending back down Maslow's hierarchy of needs and trying to find things which were more in a survival mode before thinking about all the other aspects. So that's been a very interesting journey to chart out, both in terms, as I said, that sinusoidal curve, and also the reasons why people were showing stress and the impacts of it.
All right, that sounds pretty interesting. Speaking of the sinusoidal curve and also the challenges that employees would have started feeling after the first month of honeymoon period, as you say, ended. Particularly would like to understand from you, from the management's perspective, one of the key challenges is to drive peak performance consistently. So in your research on the challenges faced, by humans before conquering it eventually, the extreme environment at Mount Everest to the Mariana Trench, from the South Pole to the Sahara Desert, from running a marathon to traveling to Mars now, have you been able to find some hacks for driving this consistent peak performance? Might you want to give away some tips as a parting gift to our beautiful audience today? You're not audible. You're not audible, Marcus.
Sorry, that's probably at least we got it in once. That has to be said on every webinar at some point. You're on mute. No, it's the reason why I even founded the Human Edge as a platform. I wrote the book and why I set up the organization as well. It's because as organization and leaders, we are constantly striving to imbibe attributes that we consider successful, right? Focus, resiliency, rapid learning, memory, peak performance, etc. And what I found in the work that I've been doing for all these years is that there's a disconnect. There is a fundamental disconnect between the attribute of success and the alignment of our biology, principally the physiology and the psychology, right? Unless we take care of who we are at a fundamental level, which is 5 trillion biological cells just glued together with some extracellular matrix gunk, then we're not going to be able to tap into that higher level of potentiation and capabilities. So that's sort of been the core area of my focus. And I try and distill this down into the simplest possible mechanism, which is something I call the biohack, which is, what is it that you can do today that you can be successful at, which over a period of time in sustainability will lead to that particular attribute that you're looking at. For example, right? A person comes to me and they say that, okay, you know what, I'm convinced by your conversation on sleep, right? Sleep improves productivity by 29%, and I need to get 7 hours. So I'm going to start doing it today. And I immediately remind him that's impossible. You cannot just transform your sleep overnight, no pun intended. You have to start at these simple little building blocks, which I call the biohack. So an example is keep the temperature of your room at 16 degrees Celsius, right? If you have an air condition, turn it to that temperature. If you've got a weighted blanket or a heating, if you're living somewhere cold. So 16 to 18 degrees Celsius, that's roughly 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, is the optimal temperature which you get your restorative sleep. Right? That's a really simple one. The other thing, just sticking on the theme of sleep, is just not having any digital devices in your room. So ensuring that at least 30 minutes pass between when you last touch your phone or your television screen or your iPad, and by the time you put your head on the pillow. So a lot of my time is distilling the ambition and the goal, understanding what are the behaviors that are associated with being successful at that goal. Now, what are the habits which need to line up? And then underneath the habit, what are the little biohacks that you have that will allow you to get there? Because the simplest way of getting there is the easiest way, but we try and complicate our lives and try and do too much at the same time, which is what ultimately doesn't set us up for success. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Marcus. Actually, you did speak a little French to me earlier when you answered this question, when you just went on with your medical terminologies. But I do understand, thankfully, after your simplification on the biohacks and how, as individuals, we could all derive our own little biohacks. What works for one may not work for the other, but understanding the ambition and goals that we may have for ourselves, we could identify some behaviors and some biohacks, as you called. For those who want to understand more of this biohacks, feel free to order in a copy of At the Human Edge by Dr. Marcus. I just did that recently. And well, thank you so much. Well, that brings us to the end of this quite interesting quick panel discussion we had with such eminent learned professionals with such beautiful background to make this even more interesting. I enjoyed this conversation thoroughly, and I hope in the audience all others would have enjoyed it as much. And with that, I wish you all well, be safe, and have a nice weekend. Over to you, Mr. Srikanth.
Thank you, Suvarna. Thank you. It is such an reinvigorating kind of enlightening discussion, and you steered it so well. Thank you so much. I hope all our participants must have also enjoyed it. Many things to learn and carry from here. Many thanks to all the speakers. Industry leadership, providing direction to peers, and technology pushing a empathy agenda more than in the past, as spoken by Yash. How a business is expanding boundaries, caring beyond employees to the customers, as shared by Shalini, and her emphasis on need for connect. Sunny's new contribution on strength orientation, thank you, Sunny, and brilliant point on having and demonstrating empathy are two different things, and a very crisp data-based analysis of stress, prescribing simple solutions, and the insight on connection between competencies and physiology by Dr. Marcus. You all have added great value to the conclave. Appreciate your time for being with us, and we regret the delay in beginning of this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Srikanth. Thank you, Yash.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so now we move into the last leg of the HR conclave. Developing talent is the responsibility of people managers, HR, and talent themselves. Okay, so when it comes to structured development, HR takes the front stage. And HR finds opportunities that help talent to learn and reach to the right opportunities. VIE, a program managed by Business France, is one such significant opportunity. To help us better understand, we have with us Anne Desimon, Head of Tech and Services Department, Mumbai Office Director, Business France, Career and Learning Opportunities for developing young professionals under the VIE scheme. Welcome, Anne, and over to you.
Thank you very much. So I will share a presentation. Yes. I will share a presentation with you regarding the VIE scheme, and I'm also happy to introduce Mr. Varambali, who is who is the CEO of a company called ST Microelectronics, and who is using the VIE formula at the moment. Can you see my screen?
Yes, clearly.
Okay, great. So just to do a quick presentation about the VIE scheme. So the VIE program in India is a French international young professional program that is under the Franco-Indian Bilateral Cooperation Act, so favoring, employment of international young talents to India. So basically, it goes from France to India, but with this Bilateral Cooperation Act, there is also a possibility for young Indian talents to go to France through another scheme. So the VIE program is a natural solution for young talents. Doing, like a professional assignments abroad between 6 months to 24 months, which is renewable once. So this VIE program has been created by Business France and is under French law and is proven to be, a secure and attractive option for French companies, but also for young talents. So just to describe what is the VIE program. So basically, all the companies that can benefit from this program are French companies, whether they are like startups, SMEs, but also, like French subsidiaries based in India, but also Indian companies that have registered office in France for more than 6 months. And basically, the program aims, to develop, the activity of a company internationally. The candidates that can apply to this program are French nationals, but also all the EU citizens and also OCI. OCI people. So they are the one that can deal with this program, and they all need to be between 18 to 28 years old. And also the type of assignment that can be given to these young talents are wide. I mean, it can be, like from sales and marketing to production, quality control, supply chain, business development. That's the first part of the explanation of the scheme. And I will let the flow to Raja Mohan, who will explain who is ST Microelectronics and how many VIEs they have and how do they fund the scheme. Raja Mohan, the floor is yours.
Okay, am I audible? Yes. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So just to give you the context, ours is a Franco-Italian company. It's a multinational company having operations in India for the past 30 years. So we have engineers, around 800 engineers. Our job is to design semiconductor products, which are electronic components. Our fabrication is in France and Italy and Singapore. And our operations, the R&D, what we do here, we work closely with the French and Italian people in the parent company. So usually what happens, we do send our people to have a better interaction with the people in France, and the people often they visit, but then we don't have people working in India for long duration. So this VIE has helped us in a big way with the 7 people already working in India. 4 have worked and they have gone back. They spent 1 to 2 years in India, and remaining 3 are currently at our place at Greater Noida. They even traveled to India during the pandemic time. So currently they are working. We found them very good engineers, though we did not get the experienced one, but we could easily expose them to the business, what we are doing. And in few months, they could pick up and start contributing. And it's a great advantage for us. One is in terms of culture, they appreciate the differences, Indian culture and the French culture. And when they go back, they often try to get the job there in France. If there are vacancies, they will join. And it becomes a good bridge for us to have understanding of the culture as well as even in some meetings where communication can be improved. So this is the overall benefit, and we found them, mixing pretty well with us, and they travel all over India. It's also opportunity for them to explore India. So it becomes a wonderful experience for them, those who come, and even for us. And we see them socially living in Delhi beautifully with a nice community of people from France. So this is what I could briefly tell. And you would like to change the slide to the next one?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
So if you can continue, maybe Rajamohan, to tell us why ST Micro decided to hire VIEs in the first place.
Yeah. First of all, it was more or less free of cost for Noida. So we get a full-fledged engineer at no cost locally here. Of course, there could be some expenses, but it's a resource for us. And like I mentioned already, culturally, it's a wonderful bridge from India to France when they go back, especially when they're here also. And even for our people, it's a good exposure to interact with the people coming from France and even a little bit understand the cultural dimension. Apart from their contribution, I would say the main advantage is to also to link for long term. When people work in India, and I anticipate maybe in 5-10 years when they really grow into senior positions, especially in our company, it can help in really giving and taking in a much bigger way. Instead of remaining as a satellite unit, it can be integrated with the corporate for the strategic business operations. So, in nutshell, it's a good resource for us and no real cost. And I believe also for ST overall, even in France, it will be economical because I believe there is a support also from the government in France, which Anne can communicate more.
Yes, so basically, yeah, for generally the companies, they hire VIEs for various reasons, and Rajamohan, like mentioned some of them. I would say that obviously it's an alternative and lower cost to expatriation for French subsidies coming to India. And also most generally for all the companies, it is also, like an HR tool that can be used, to an opportunity, for new potential recruits. So it can be part of the HR policy to be able to give an opportunity for young talents to go abroad for an assignment that generally are really interesting. And also, as Rajamohan explained, it contributes a lot, in developing multicultural teams and, like keeping the bridge between French and companies in India. So they are one of the most important reasons why companies are hiring VIEs. And also, yes, I mean they can be hired for various kinds of assignments, and that's where the program also is very interesting for companies, but also for young talents. Just generally speaking, I'm going to explain how the VIE is working. So as Rajamohan said, basically the contract is made of 3 parties. So Business France is the third party and is having a contract with the company in France on the one hand, and on the other hand, Business France is also taking, like the contract with the young talent. So it means that the hosting structure in India doesn't have to deal with all the administration and the paperwork. And Business France, so our organization, so the trade agency of the French government, is also helping a lot the young talent with the visas, but also with all the FRRO and all the procedures. What is really important to know is that still the VIE is working within a company and as a manager that is within the hosting structure. That is really important because obviously his main mission and assignment will be be dealt within this environment. So Business France bring, like support for the VIE in terms of security, in terms also of helping with administration in the country and also in France. And we are also supporting the companies in France and in India, because I'm part of the Mumbai office personally. I'm the head of the Mumbai office, and in India, Business France has 2 people plus myself working directly on the VIE scheme, helping companies to express their needs regarding VIEs, but also helping out youngsters and young talents when they have questions also. What Business France is providing, as I said, is a contract with the company in France, and also with the candidate, which is like the pay plus the social security, which is also very important. Regarding the various, advantages of the program. So as we said before, the VIE in India can be placed in various companies all over India. So obviously in the major cities, but also in smaller cities. So it's really everywhere. The competitive advantage is that it's an alternative to expatriation. And what is really important to know is that also with the pandemic, currently, we've noticed that it's quite difficult for young talents to get, assignments abroad. And we really believe that this program will help them to have, very interesting assignment abroad. And we are dealing with very motivated and qualified candidates that are all, looking forward to come to India to get on a mission. Regarding the contract is really flexible because it's up to 24 months with the possibility to change from one country to the other if the priority of the companies is changing. It may happen sometime that VIE goes from India to Singapore or the other way around, and we are facilitating that to make sure that is dealt, in a very smooth way, and to make sure that we are able to do it quite easily. And also it's very simple because, as we said, we are based in India to help, companies get more VIEs and also the young talents. But in France, we also have a team that are specialized, in HR recruitment, so they can help any companies willing to get access to this program to find the new candidates, and also simplicity, because all these VIEs are coming to India under a student visa, and the student visa is open in India now, and so we have VIEs that can come back to India, and we are helping them a lot, and we are in contact with the various authorities to make the process really easy. So I think that's all for my presentation. I will just ask Raja Mohan if you have maybe some conclusion and some other testimony to add regarding your experience with the VIE.
Yeah. In fact, our demand was five people, but unfortunately, we could not really fill all 5 at a given time. Of course, we were getting 3 to 4 people at any given time coming and going. In fact, I recently made a recommendation to have 10 more engineers, and I requested Anne to support me to find more talented people who will be readily, to match the real talent with our industry. So this is what my wish is, to have 10 people in India. I must say that I was so happy to see some of the VAs integrating culturally, wearing Indian traditional dress and participating in Diwali celebrations, and buying a bike and traveling all over India on a bike. So it was very heartening to see how the VAs, when they stay in India, utilize the opportunity to culturally to integrate with us. So it was a pleasure thing for me to really notice that. So I recommend anybody to use this opportunity, because it was not difficult to get. The paperwork to get them was pretty simple. So I highly recommend. That's all I can say. And
Thank you very much, Rajamohan, for your
that's it.
time.
Yeah.
So if you have any question, we can take them now, or if you have any question, you can also send us any question on this address, vie.and@businessfrance.fr. And I'm happy to give you also my contact details. What is important to know is that before the pandemic, we had a bit more than 100 VIEs in India in various cities. Working for various type of companies, SMEs, and some also joint ventures and French subsidiaries. We have now 60 VIEs in India, and our goal is really to get to the 100 that we had before COVID, because we truly believe that today, I mean, the relationship between France and India has always been great, but I think it's a great timing now to have more VIEs, and also because the growth in India will continue tremendously and at a better rate, than any other country in the world. That's what like all the economies are saying. So we do believe that it's a great time to get more VIEs to India. And we're happy to support any companies and also any candidates that had any questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Rajamohan. And I'm sure many of our participants will be interested in utilizing the VIE program for young talent and will contact you. Thank you for sharing with us all the details. And we appreciate your time in joining the HR conference. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rajamohan.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
So, dear friends, with that, we come to the end of this two-day HR conclave on resilience leading to Renaissance. But stay tuned for a few more minutes. Okay, you'll agree with me that the 25 global speakers and such an engaging sharing by each one on different themes, each one of us is going to carry several messages and learnings that we can implement in our organizations. I sincerely regret for not being able to address any questions and the delay that was caused today in closing this session. For the closing remarks, now I invite our Vice Chairman of HR Committee, Pallavi Tyagi. Pallavi is the Chief Human Resources Officer for Capgemini in India. She drives the HR and talent strategy for Capgemini in India and serves as its representative in the global Capgemini HR leadership team. Her people-focused charter includes business HR, talent acquisition, learning and development, transformation and retention, talent mobility, one employee experience, diversity and inclusion, and organizational competitiveness. Pallavi has more than 2 decades of vast experience in fast-moving consumer goods, information technology, as well as process and discrete manufacturing companies. Pallavi, over to you.
Thank you so much, Srikanth, for the kind introduction. Really appreciate it. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's been such a power-packed agenda, and what great sessions and what great learning. I have taken quite a few learnings from the sessions that we've had, and I'm sure all of you as well would have learned something from some of the sessions and take it back to workplace, which is working from home. It has been full of takeaways for myself. We've had such wonderful, qualified panelists, speakers, and we were so privileged to hear from them, from their expertise, from their organization's point of view, from their experiences on various aspects and topics since yesterday. We again would like to thank Payal and Sapna, who actually looked at doing this HR conclave, which has been the first of its kind at IFCCI, and of course Srikanth and Neeru, who actually looked at what would be the theme, what are the kind of sessions we would like to have, which would be enriching for all of us, and then of course taking it to execution over here today. What we heard today was starting with Anne Libel, talking about leadership in new normal. She spoke about empathy. She spoke about learning new behaviors and new styles of leadership, and the fact that people leadership and human matters at the heart of the leaders' responsibilities. And leaders need to show multidimensional leadership, people, business strategy, thought leadership, with a more human component added to each dimension. And then, of course, we heard Isabel's thoughts as well on various aspects. We've had our panel discussion on the new employment model, very unique in its thought process. Thanks to Manu, Nicola, Atul, and Nitin for their valuable inputs, and Meetnul for moderating the same. We will have to reimagine employment contracts, take gig economy into consideration, focus on hybrid flexible models, which are required in the new normal. If we look at the new wage code, which is going to be released, that also has a mention of gig economy. In the second panel discussion, we looked at mental well-being and building resilience at the workplace. We had Yashwant, Soni, Shalini, and Dr. Marcus discussing on how there is more focus on mental well-being and resilience in today's new normal. And how do we have that barometer in us to understand if someone is undergoing tremendous mental pressure and stress, and how we are able to come up with some key takeaways for our organizations and for ourselves individually as well. How do we as an organization make our employees feel safe? Resilience is key to bouncing back. It's also the theme of our HR conclave, resilience leading to renaissance. And Desmond shared about why the international internship program that she manages. The VIE program is an important means for companies to develop their business in new markets internationally, and thereby strengthening the French economic community across the globe. It's also an excellent opportunity for young people to gain solid professional experience internationally and develop their skills. With all of this enriching learning, once again, thanks to all the leaders who participated in the HR conclave, and for you, wonderful audience, for joining in, sharing your inputs through comments. We could not take questions, and we look forward to your feedback. I do hope you had some key takeaways that you can go back and implement within your organizations. Thank you once again, Shrikant, Chairman FP Committee, Niruban, Vice Chairman FP HR Committee, for your wonderful support, guidance, and really making this dream a reality. Special thanks to Sapna, Neha, Bhakti, and the entire FP team, including Payal, for organizing this event. And with this, over back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pallavi. Very well said and very well summed up. Really appreciate that. So friends, we'll continue to bring more such events in coming months. Your participation in big numbers is very encouraging for us. We look forward to seeing you again soon in another event with new themes and new speakers. Request you to please be with us for a couple of minutes more before we formally close the event. Now, before I invite Rishika Rai, Head of Committees and Events North of IFCCI, to propose a vote of thanks. As a convener of this conclave, I want to express my sincere thanks to Payal Kanwar for providing direction and leadership, and our two vice chairpersons, Pallavi and Niruban, for their support and contribution in organizing this event. And most importantly, to Sapna Verma, Bhakti Bakai, and Neha Nethani, who actually take the lion's share in organizing this. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And kudos to you. Rishika, over to you. You're not audible.
Rishika, unmute.
Oh.
We can't hear
Can't
you,
hear
Rishika.
Rishika, you can try now.
No, unfortunately not.
Rishika, is it good? I can maybe close if Rishika is having an issue.
Looks so actually, Sapna.
Okay. Okay, no worries. So I think we won't maybe keep the audience and everybody waiting. So thank you so much, Pallavi, for your closing remarks, Shrikant and Niruban for your comments and also the closing points. So I'd really like to thank starting of course with our participants also who've shown so much enthusiasm to attend this session. And this has been the first flagship HR conclave, and we really hope that this is going to be the start of many more sessions every year. And being the first edition, we really appreciate the interest and the enthusiasm that we have seen, not only from our participants, but also members of our HR committee and the members of the chamber who have contributed in different ways and actually supported us. So I'd like to thank all our speakers and panelists, esteemed keynote speakers Cedric Rama and Anne Lebel, for great insights that they shared and actually set the momentum for day 1 and day 2. We also like to thank all the panelists and all the moderators who actually spent so much time to put this entire event and sessions together. So we've all had great takeaways, and like Pallavi said, we really hope that business leaders and HR professionals will be able to implement these takeaways in their organization. Most importantly, I'd like to thank the leadership of the IFCCI HR committee, Shrikant Lonikar, CHRO Pernurika, Pallavi Tyagi, CHRO Capgemini, and Niruban Rupathevan, Head HR, BNP Paribas GSO, for their continuous support and guidance for organizing the HR conclave. We also appreciate the involvement and participation of all our HR committee members. And of course, it's important for me also to mention that we would again like to thank our event sponsors, Platinum sponsors, Capgemini, EM Leo Business School and Pernurica, Gold sponsors, Amadeus Labs, Silver sponsors, Legrand and Sodexo Benefits and Rewards Services India. We thank our media partner, People Matters, and knowledge partner, Trilegal, for their support. So I'd really like to close this session by, sharing with you all that we've had great participation. We had about 350 participants who attended yesterday, and I think we had about 250 plus today. We'll know the statistics soon. And it's been a great experience for us. And on that note, I'd like to close and thank you again, everybody. And we hope to have another one of these interesting sessions soon again next year. So thank you so much, everyone. And we can end on that note. Have a lovely evening and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
You want to tell them on the e-publication you will be sending them?
Yes, absolutely, Shrikant. I can repeat that again, because we had launched it. We've come out with a very small e-publication. It's just 20 pages. It's got some wonderful introductions and forwards from the leadership of our IFCCI HR committee. It's also got some interesting articles from HR heads and HR experts and business leaders. So we'll be sharing that with all the participants. We'll be also sending it out as a mailer early next week, and we really hope that you enjoy reading the articles in this booklet. We look forward to your feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.